Yes?
So I don't actually have a lot of confidence in this competing explanation, but the Ambicelli friends without benefits, right? The guys are not fathering more offspring. If I understood your analysis correctly, you were comparing males in friendships to the, sorry, remind me now, what was the comparison point?
We're talking about future mating success?
Right.
So I looked at friendship dyads, and looked at the male's chances of mating with that particular female more than he would have achieved otherwise after she resumed cycling.
So that's the key variable that I lost in my thought. Suppose that in your description you put out the offhand suggestion that males might be advertising their suitability as partners in general, not just to their particular partner, right? So wouldn't the proper comparison be between males who were in friendship dyads and males who were not between males' probability of mating with their friend and males' probability of mating with non-friends?
Right. Well, the thing is, we don't know if those guys are friends with other females or were friends with other females, because I focused on the mothers and infants. And so, if you just look to see if males, if some males, if I understand your question right, achieve more mating success than you would expect based on their rank, I'd have to be able to account for who they were, how they were spending their time, right? If I'm understanding your question right. So I focused on looking at whether the male achieved more success with that individual female once she resumed cycling. It doesn't mean that he isn't possibly increasing his chances of, saying, being selected as a mate by other females, but all I can say is for that individual female. Now, rank is a really, really important in baboons, especially in Ambicelli, in determining male reproductive success. And so there's very little wiggle room, I think, that females have to exercise choice, I think, during daylight hours, when observers are out. So there is that potential component, right, that females may be exercising choice at other times that we don't see. But that's sort of beyond the scope of the study. And I think the potential that males could also maybe, and I didn't look at males to know this, but they could also benefit. Barber macaque males use infants in these triadic interactions where they hold up an infant to try to not get the crap beaten out of them. And so maybe male baboons and Ambicelli are doing something like that. They're using this proximity to these females to not get harassed by other males. So they're benefiting in some way. But I only focused on females. I wasn't able to test that idea. Yeah.
It's related to this question. Is it clear that there is a cost in reproductive success to the males who are friends with females as compared to other males who don't have friends? Is it clear that they are paying a cost?
Right. That's an excellent question. What is the cost that they're paying? So they are hanging out with mothers and infants. Maybe they should be off. If you think of an energetics model, they should be off trying to curry favor with fertile females who could exercise choice right there and then. So
this estimate you don't have at this point.
No, I did not focus on males.
So related to this, there's certainly a benefit to the offspring of the female, right? And have you tried to estimate the relation, the relatedness between the males or friends and the offspring of the female? Because if the cost is low and there is a benefit to that offspring, even if the relatedness is only 10%.
Right.
Hamilton's rule may.
Yeah, no, that's a good that's a great suggestion. I think the most parsimonious explanation would be that the individual would gain some benefit for themselves because in terms of inclusive fitness, I think that's a good possibility, and I didn't look at that. But that's certainly something that's possible. Although I personally think that the most parsimonious explanation would be that the individual would gain directly rather than sort of through indirect reproduction. But that's not saying that it's not possible. But yeah, what did you say? Sorry.
I was wondering about the concertships. So, given that rank is important to reproductive success, and they have these concertships, how promiscuous are they actually?
On average, females have about 4 mates per each fertile period. So, as the swelling reaches its maximum size, so around the day of ovulation, so during the 5 days before the swelling gets flat. So those are 5 days where she could potentially conceive the offspring. And we see that she has more partners, more consortship partners. Consortships last anywhere from a few hours to days. So she could have, say, a greater variety of consortship partners early on, but then as she gets closer to ovulation, it's usually the highest ranking individuals who get to monopolize her time during that period. So yeah, rank is a huge component of this. Although there are instances where males are able to sneak, and like young males can sire offspring with young females who are less desirable to adult males because of their lack of experience. So,
just thinking of that sort of assortative friendship, like assortative matings. In the vervets, a low-ranking male would hang out with a low-ranking female. And I don't think there were mating benefits, but there could be benefits, just health benefits to being groomed. There could be survival benefits to the male that he gets to stay in the group. You mentioned something about whether they're there the next year or not. It could be just sort of generally more sort of socially calmer for the male who can develop a relationship with a female.
That's true. I mean, there's certainly a lot of other benefits that can accrue to an individual, like grooming benefits. Although a mother with a young infant is often tired, so she grooms males. She'll give up all other grooming partners, but she'll keep her primary male grooming partner. So you can see this precipitous drop in grooming partner. She's groomed more often by others who want to be near the infant, but she herself pretty much stops grooming them, but she still continues to groom the adult males, especially if he was her favorite partner before birth, and then he continues to be her favorite partner after birth, which was the case in most of these females too. I looked at continuity in choice, and so yeah, I think there are lots of other benefits that can accrue to an individual. That would explain why non-father friends would be friends, non-fathers would be friends.
Yeah. I had another question about seasonality. I mean, it's clear that you have seasonality in Ethiopia, but it's my impression that most primates are seasonal, and Amboseli is a seasonal environment. Why aren't baboons more seasonal?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think, just based on my experience there, for me, I don't think Amboseli is as, there are periods of the year where it rains, and then there are really hot periods of the year. So it does feel semi-seasonal, but at Guasa it's so extreme. You have 2 months where it's just pouring buckets every day. And 2,500 millimeters of rain a year is an insane amount of rain. So, and the productivity, because it's an alpine grassland, the grass growth is really heavily dependent on rainfall, not temperature or anything, but rainfall. So I think because it's high, I think there's less diversity of vegetation, so there are fewer things that they can eat. So they mostly eat the grass and the herbs that grow there. 3,500 meters, we're above the tree line, so there are no trees. Amboseli baboons have trees they can climb up to. They've got a lot of more food choices. I think Stuart said that they're eating from, I don't know if you remember, Joan, but I think over 100 different plant species. And at Guasa, the animals eat from about, 50 different plant species, but most of what they eat comes from, from just maybe 20 plant species. So they're not as diverse dietarily as the baboons. And so I think that's maybe one way that baboons can escape the confines of their environment, is to be a jack of all trades. They're very good at eating a lot of different things, whereas geladas are much more specialized. And it's thought that may explain why they only occur at high altitude, because they just lost out to the common baboon. Historically they were all over, and then now they're only confined in these little pockets because they're so specialized. And
So I have a question about males. You have this nice variation between friends who are fathers and friends who are not fathers, and also looks like they're not even confused about being fathers, that they don't have they didn't have the mating experience. So can you see any effect of paternity on that impact on moms? So that you have that nice data that mothers hassle less when they're with their friends. So are these males all equally effective in that?
I would think so, although I don't know if because females vary in rank, and so that's the thing. You know, when you're limited by sample size, females vary in rank, and most females will defer to an adult male, whether he is the lowest ranking adult male. So I think if most of the threats come from, say, adult or immature females rather than males, and I think probably any male will do in that instance.
His presence.
Yeah, he's not actually intervening on physically intervening.
Threaten females.
Right.
Or
Well, sometimes they give a look. It's that, you know, that dirty look. And these other females, especially the young girls, who are really pesky, you know, just really, really irritating, as juvenile females, you know, most species can be. But they get that look from the male, and they try a different tactic, maybe grooming mom at first. So I think as far, you know, just looking at the data, sort of from my perspective, it seems that males are probably all equally good, and obviously the guys who are willing to intervene, you know, are probably better. But because males vary in rank in my study, and the females vary in rank, there's that component that I had to deal with. But rank didn't seem to be a predictor of the rate at which infants were polled, because all infants were polled, handled, regardless of rank. So.
What about proximity maintenance between females and stuff? Do they differ based on, are there any differences in who's responsible for maintaining proximity among those females paired with fathers versus non-fathers?
Yeah, I didn't look at the making and breaking of male-female contact, because I was mostly focused on the mother-infant relationship. So it's just incredibly, taxing to watch every make and break. So I wasn't able to collect data on who initiated and terminated male-female proximity patterns. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting to see who the initiator and recipient. I would imagine it would be females, because it seems to me they have the most to gain. But again, I don't really know what the males may be getting out of this arrangement. Yeah.
So if
Do you have another hard question for me?
I don't think so. I don't know. So I think you showed a graph where, in fact, the infanticide risk time was when the friends were around less.
Yes.
Is that true? Like, I don't know if it was significant, but it seemed like consistent.
Females are spending less time rather than more time when they're spending less time with their male friends rather than spending more time with their male friends when the risk of infanticide is greater or expected to be greater.
So is it around those times also that perhaps like males are trying to attain rank? Or is it moments of instability like these where it actually matter that males go? Like, what are they doing instead? Is that part of the opportunity? There's an opportunity cost between, like, in this particular moment, it's costly to be around and be a friend to the woman, but the female, and so he's actually taking advantage of it. And like, when it's high cost to stick around, he actually goes and.
Right. See, I didn't collect data on males. So I don't know if they're changing if their behavior is any different. But it seems that females, mothers with young infants, are spending less time in proximity to male friends during those periods. So I would think it's probably the female who is responsible for that, and that just trying to stay out of the sort of craziness that is the male baboons world. So just trying to keep out of that zone and area so that you are less vulnerable to anything that could happen when males are vying with one another for rank. And the reason I focused on those two variables was because Carl Van Schaik did an analysis where he looked at reported, confirmed cases of infanticide, and most of them occur during periods of instability in the male dominance hierarchy. I think like over 85% of them. So that's why I focused on that period. Although at Ambicelli, in Jean's 40 plus years, I think she's only had like one reported case of infanticide, and the male, it was cannibalism because he ate the offspring. So it wasn't the normal kind of infanticide. But this is one observed case in over 40 years of monitoring this population. So whatever's going on, maybe they're really good at the friendship stuff is really paying heavy dividends, or maybe the selective pressure is not there. We just don't know. Yeah.
Just coming back again a little bit to the male friendship. I'm just wondering if there's a complication here just in terms of not having a long enough period of time to be observing what's happening sort of in the long run with respect to the males. What I'm thinking of, just from the comments that have been made, that it sounds like one way of looking at it is saying that the friendships are being driven by the females. The females have the interest of getting the males to be friends with them. And I would assume from her viewpoint, whether the friend actually impregnates her or not is probably not so all that critical from her viewpoint.
Uh-huh.
Which case one might, if we have only a short period of time to do observation,
Mm-hmm.
then one would say, well, females are getting a lot of male friends. A lot of females have male friends.
Uh-huh.
Of that cohort of male friends, some of them will have in fact been successful in terms of impregnating females.
Right.
And so we might be just dividing up the world in terms of those who did and those who didn't from the male viewpoint, just because we're only looking at a short period of time. As if we had data over, say, 10 or 20 years,
Right.
would some males be consistently successful?
Right.
Which is really what one would want to know. Or is male success in terms of impregnating, variable across males, and so at any given point in time, all one's observing is the fact that some males have a chance of doing it, some don't.
Right.
And it's not really, there are different kinds of males and
Right.
different
No,
strategies.
that's an excellent point. I mean, we really need to follow individuals over the long term, over their entire lifetime, to see if the particular choice that they make, right, either being the jerk and rising to high rank and, bullying others around, whether the alternative tactic, which is to be a nicer kind of individual, whether that sort of pays as well as or comparably to the sort of jerk-like tactic. So, and that's data we don't have on this population, or at least that I don't have, and that isn't really being sort of it's not the focus of any studies now. But I think that's what I did was I looked at males who continue to stay in the group. Because males have their own agendas too. They want to move between, if the opportunities aren't good here, they'll move to another group and try a different tactic. So I looked at the males who stayed in the group during the mother's future cycles. And of the ones who stayed all the way through until she conceived her next offspring, I only had 15 individuals do that. And of those 15 males, they did not I did not see that they had greater mating success with the mother over and above what they would have gotten based on their rank. But it doesn't mean that they didn't have success with other females or that there aren't some other benefits, like Lynn mentioned, that accrues to them. But you're right, you have to follow individuals over the long term to really understand what they may be getting out of these things. And then take into account cost, because if it's not very costly, then maybe it's not so bad to do these things. Joe?
And what about male age and participation in friendships? Because isn't it, so you said about you can be a nice guy or a jerk, but isn't it the case that you can only successfully be a jerk when you're a young adult, and then your formidability is all downhill from there, and that perhaps it's only when you can no longer fight very well that you use being a nice guy as an alternative?
Yeah, well, I know that the friends who were fathers tended to be higher ranking. I think they tended to be prime age males rather than too young or too old, which is so the guy. So I think that's I don't know if that sort of addresses what you're saying, that that the options available to you will change as you age through life. That's something that's really interesting, and one would have to follow males throughout their careers to see if that's the case. And even among the geladas at Guasa, we see lots of variation among leader males in style. Some are real jerks, they're constantly beating up females. And this is a society where we've been long told, that they have girl power, that the females rule in this society. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing that they're kind of Hamadryas baboon-like. There's a lot of variation among males. Some leader males can have 10 females under their control, but the females just wander off wherever they go. We actually had one female who was kidnapped by another male from another group. And she was kidnapped for like 10 days, because that's because she belongs to a group where the male doesn't really keep an eye on the females. They just wander wherever they want. So she was kidnapped, and then the follower male actually went and retrieved her. So she was, so she was brought back to the group, but the leader male is like, whatever. But then we also have leader males in other groups that are incredibly vigilant. I mean, constantly like, where are you going? Where are you going? Get back here. You're within 20 meters. And it's just, they're constantly, and I don't know how they manage to do it, but there's a lot of variability. So I don't know if there's an age component. Certainly your formidableness does decline with age, but maybe you're just less nasty as you get older if you're, we don't really know that. I know Marina Cordes has looked at infanticide in the blue monkeys at Kakamega, and she found that half of the time the males who come into the population commit infanticide. The other half of the time they don't. And she looked at all these variables. Is it age? Is it this? Is it that? And the only thing that seems to explain it is just who the guy is. So he's either infanticidal or he's not. So there's a lot of, but we don't know if he continues that way throughout his whole life and if his kids tend to be infanticidal. But it's just an interesting, there's the sort of signature of the individual is so strong. And it's hard to make sense and generalize because when you study field animals, you just have like 10 unit, or you have 20 animals. And they vary in so many attributes. They differ in how they grew up, who their mom was, and all these things impact them. So I just feel lucky to find some patterns, Justin?
In that small sample of female-male bonds you have, so is there variation in the female dominance rank? And so like, are males where the father's preferentially trying to take care of infants from a lower ranking mother?
We didn't see any variation among the females in terms of whether high-ranked females had spent more time with male friends or less time. We found no effect of rank on the amount of time spent in proximity to male friends. And I was curious to know if high-ranking males chose high-ranking females. That doesn't seem to be the case here, or at least in the data set that I had. And it could just be a personal preference. I looked at to see whether the male had immature offspring in the group, like other immature offspring besides this one. Does that impact his decision to care for this one? And, again, given the small sample size, we weren't able to detect anything meaningful to say that a guy who's overcommitted, has like 8 other kids in the group, is less likely to be a father friend than a guy who has only, say, 3 other kids in the group. I just didn't have the power to say anything meaningful about that. But that's certainly something very interesting that we'd like to look into.
So when dad is not the friend, or females that form friendships with males who are not the fathers of their kids, is that male spending time with another female? Is he not in the group? Is he, why aren't they having friendships with dad? Do you know?
Right, so that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if he had other kids that he was devoting his time to, and I didn't see any relationship. I couldn't detect anything meaningful to show me that a father who was not a friend did so because he had so many other immature offspring in the group. I wasn't following him, but I could at least say how many other.
You knew the father of those ones that didn't. How many of them the father was still present? They were all still present?
For the 23 infants that were included in the study, yeah.
Their dads were all there.
Yeah, so half of them was a father friend, and the other half was a friend who was not a father. And in that group, I tried to see if there was something else, vying for his attention, other number of offspring or number of females in the group or things like that. But in such a small group of, say, 12 individuals, I couldn't really find anything. Or not 12 individuals, but 12 potential dyads that could have occurred, father-mother dyads that could have occurred. I didn't see anything that distinguished them from the father-mother dyads that did form. So, I didn't see any difference between age. I couldn't find any difference. But they live in 4 different social groups, vary in ranks. So there's all this other stuff that I can't control for. So. Did you have a question, Susan? No?
I was just trying to remember what the ambicillate data set's like, or if there are any kinds of, I know you're going to have the same exact focal protocol for all of these others, but aren't there at least group scans or something like that where you could figure out who those males are associating with?
Yeah, so they do
address that?
Right. They do 10-minute point samples, so at 1-minute intervals, and during I believe they do record nearest neighbor data, but. Sorry?
They always record the nearest
yes.
male.
Yeah. But the sort of for the period that I was focusing on, I think they strive to, they aim to get, say, maybe 1 or 2 of those 10-minute, point samples, 10-minute focal animal samples per individual per month, and I needed more intensive sampling than what's possible. We've got over 200 individuals in the population, and they're. Most of the animals that are sampled are females or adults, and they don't. I don't think they're monitoring juveniles as intensively. So, but yeah, the coverage is going to be a lot less than I was able to do as a PhD student, focusing exclusively on this topic. So.
We
you do
have to break for time.
Okay.
Okay, because we're up, but we can still, you can answer your question.
Okay.
Ask your question first.